So when you picture the Vietnam War, what immediately comes to mind, for most of us, right, it's probably intense jungle firefights, those iconic combat photos, headlines about big battles.
Yeah, the stuff we've seen in movies for decades.
Exactly. But what if I told you that for the vast majority of American soldiers who served there, that wasn't their experience at all? Our deep dive today really challenges those deeply ingrained images. We're looking at Larry Siegel's book, Tears of the Dragon, The Other Vietnam War. It's a really personal and honestly surprising perspective.
And our mission here for you listening is to try and uncover some of those overlooked realities. What did most Americans actually experience in Vietnam? Because it often contrasts pretty sharply with that popular narrative.
It really does.
It's about getting past, the easy headlines to the more complex human stories underneath.
Okay, let's unpack that a bit. Siegel points out something significant from his own tour in 69-70. He says no more than 35% of U.S. soldiers were actually direct combat infantrymen.
35%? That's wow.
Right. The vast majority, so like 2/3 of American troops, were part of what's often called the logistical tail.
The support structure.
Yeah, exactly. They were doing jobs like typing documents, driving supply trucks, maybe rebuilding schools, or digging water wells out in rural Vietnamese hamlets and villages.
Not exactly the Rambo image.
Not at all. Siegel himself describes it as very different from how the media, the army, or anyone I knew had described it. So this idea that every soldier was in combat, it's largely a myth.
And what's fascinating there is precisely that contrast, like you said, with those images we all have. If you connect this to the bigger picture, it really highlights this deliberate hearts and minds strategy.
Oh, right.
This was often led by U.S. civilian agencies, like USA, that's the Agency for International Development, and also military civil affairs units. Their whole aim was improving local life on the ground.
How so? What kind of things?
Well, they introduced new farming techniques, like this strain of wonder rice from the Philippines, better animal breeding programs, and crucially, fostering local democracy. It wasn't just about fighting, it was building too.
And the scale of that effort is actually pretty astounding when you read about it. By 1969, Siegel says 95% of South Vietnam's villages and hamlets had elected their own local officials.
95%. In the middle of that war.
It's incredible, isn't it? It really does sound like what they call the super weapon of the ballot box. But you have to ask, how did the other side, the Viet Cong, react to this huge democratic push?
Well, that's where it gets really dark. The book talks about a tragic, brutal response from the Viet Cong. They called it a get elected and get killed program.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Thousands of these newly elected village and hamlet leaders were targeted, assassinated, wounded, abducted. It just underscores how high the stakes were beyond the conventional battlefield. The VC clearly saw this local democracy as a major threat.
And Siegel brings out the human side of this other war, too. He talks about encounters like building a bond with a Vietnamese animal husbandry expert, a Mr. Soe. Apparently, he was quite hostile at first.
Understandable, perhaps.
Sure. But eventually, this Mr. Soe just confessed this deep yearning for peace. He told Siegel, "We must have peace. We have suffered too much." It hits hard, those personal moments.
Absolutely. It makes you realize how much those official narratives can simplify things or even erase the everyday hopes and fears of people caught in the middle.
Yeah, and speaking of overlooked things, Siegel also highlights bravery that challenges the simple narratives, like the South Vietnamese 18th ARVN Division.
ARVN, yeah, South Vietnamese Army.
Their stand at Swan Lock in 1975. It was tenacious, apparently unsupported, and it really delayed the fall of Saigon. It kind of pushes back against that common idea that they just collapsed instantly.
That's a really important point. And, even for the non-combat troops, the ones on those big protected bases like Long Binh, Siegel makes it clear there was another war happening, the war inside their heads.
What do you mean by that?
Well, the constant fear, even if indirect. The gnawing anxiety about what might happen, and frankly, just profound boredom mixed with that fear. He describes guys feeling trapped, their minds just racing constantly, even with no combat.
So that contributed to the emotional toll later on.
Significantly, it seems. It suggests a lot of veterans who suffered deeply from their time in Vietnam, well, they might never have even seen direct combat. It's a kind of unseen burden.
So, wrapping this up. What does this all mean for you listening? Yeah. I think this deep dive into the other Vietnam War really shifts how we ought to understand that whole period.
Definitely. It makes you think, doesn't it? How much of what we think we know about history is often shaped by these very limited or maybe sensationalized or sometimes politicized narratives?
That's true.
It really encourages you to always look a bit deeper, to seek out those quieter, often ignored, but maybe more truthful stories.
A powerful thought to leave you with. Until our next deep dive.